the senior senator from the great state of New Jersey, my own Bob Menendez.
Thank you very much. Your Eminences, Reverend clergy, to my colleague Congressman Pallone in the Congress, a great advocate for the Armenian people in the House of Representatives, to all of the distinguished leadership of the Knights and Daughters of Vartan. I have come here faithfully every year since I have been in the United States Congress as part of this commemoration. And I am honored to be here again to commemorate the centennial anniversary of one of the darkest events in human history. An event that we can never forget, an event that has been misrepresented and debated for a century. But today, let that debate end right here, right now. We keep faith with all who stand up to injustice anywhere and everywhere in the world. We honor those who lost their lives. We remember how they died. We pledge ourselves to change the way history remembers their deaths. To me, all men and women of goodwill recognize that genocide is genocide, plain and simple. I know it, you know it, and last week His Holiness Pope Francis said in a historic acknowledgement that he knows it as well. He called the events of 100 years ago the first genocide of the century, and he in fact is right. Last year, as the chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, I was proud for the first time to be able to pass an Armenian Genocide commemoration resolution through the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. And this year, a bipartisan group of senators I have been privileged to have join me are pushing a resolution in the Senate that commemorates the 100th anniversary of the Armenian Genocide. And it calls on President Obama to formally recognize the Armenian Genocide as genocide. That is a lesson that we must stand together against all crimes against humanity. My resolution affirms in the strongest possible terms that the Armenian Genocide was a horrifying factual reality that can never be denied, never be diminished, never mischaracterized, and never be forgotten. That we will always honor the memory of the 1.5 million innocent men, women, and children who were killed or expelled from their home by Ottoman Turkey 100 years ago. It is time for our nation to recognize the truth. It is time for the United States of America to lead globally on human rights. It is time for us to join the European Union and 11 of our NATO allies in officially recognizing the Armenian Genocide. In my view, we must not make it the policy of the United States to turn our back on man's inhumanity to man. We cannot turn our backs on the victims. Not in Armenia 1915, not anywhere that genocide occurs. And any time that we do so, we only serve to empower those around the world who would use genocide as a weapon of war. Now, I am deeply disappointed that President Obama has lost his moral compass on this issue and that we allow Turkey to have a veto on our own domestic decision. He was right as Senator Obama that what happened at that time was genocide, and we as a nation need to be right and declare it genocide today.
Yes! Yes!
Now let me close by saying I don't believe that the pressure of any ally should be sufficient to dictate what our policy and beliefs are in our country. And that's why the resolution that I've introduced in the Senate is a sign that our government is doing what it must to acknowledge the truth and recognize the events of 100 years ago as the first example of man's inhumanity to their fellow man in the last century, so that we can prevent such acts from happening again in this century. And I conclude with what Henry Morgenthau, our United States ambassador to the Ottoman Empire, said in 1919 when he explained in official cables to the United States government what he had seen. He said, quote, "When the Turkish authorities gave the orders for these deportations, they were merely giving the death warrant to a whole race. They understood this well. And in their conversations with me, they made no particular attempt to conceal the fact." Morgenthau went on to say, "I am confident that the whole history of the human race contains no such horrible episode as this. The great massacres and persecutions of the past seem almost insignificant when compared to the suffering of the Armenian race in 1915. These were the words of someone who stood witness to history and called it what it was, someone who knew firsthand what happened and why. So today, let us pledge to remember the significance of the suffering of the Armenian people in 1915 as Ambassador Morgenthau described it. And let our response to Adolf Hitler's question, when he was thinking about the beginning of exterminating the Jewish people, and he was cautioned and he said, well, who remembers the Armenians? Our answer today and forever is we remember the Armenians. We remember the 1.5 men, women, and children who lost their lives. We remember and honor their survivors, and we will never, never, ever forget.